So, what is up, everyone? Today, I'm excited to bring you my practice of the 6 most important watercolor techniques to master for a beginner. Now, this was actually taken originally from a YouTube channel by Leron Yankowski, and this was the title of his video. And since I am currently getting into watercolors, trying to get a handle on color and injecting that into my artwork and my figurative style, I thought it important to jump into these most important techniques to master. So the paper I'm using here is a GenCraft Premium watercolor paper using some Winsor & Newton paint. It was the Skechers pocket set that I got. However, I did end up getting new brushes. As you just watched me there struggling to take off the plastic tip off of the Princeton round number 10 brush. And we'll be mixing up the colors and trying to go through the 6 watercolor techniques that he outlined in his video. One of the things that he pointed out, first of all, was the importance of using enough water. And in some of them, I think that I may have used a little bit too much water inside some of my practices, but getting there. This first technique to master is the even layer. And what it involves, first of all, is mixing enough paint so that you don't have to mix again during the session, and then working from top to bottom, going from left to right in a kind of even manner. Now, I actually have an even layer that turned out much better later on the 6th and final technique, but we will come to that later. The second tip is the gradual layer. Now, his tip here is to basically perform it like the even layer, just adding in additional paint to your mix as you go down the paper. Now, I must say that in the Winsor & Newton pack that I bought, they also had a description of some methods and techniques, and they gave a different method for the gradual layer, which involved wetting the lower portion of it, using the paint on the top and allowing it to bleed and mix into the wet layer, which then pulls down the pigment to a more thin or lighter pigment, which really worked out well. I tried it in practice after I created this video. I think it worked out even better than the one there. This next technique is wet on wet, whereas you saw I wet the area first and then allow the paint to bleed in. Now, I must also point out that I do have my paper slightly tilted, just a slight tilt, stacked upon some plate mats actually, and yeah, so there is a little bit of a drain to the bottom, but yep, that technique is basically putting wet pigment on a wet piece of paper, and so it spreads out. If you want less spreading, you use thicker paint. More spreading, you use thinner paint. The fourth approach here is negative painting, learning to paint around shapes. And I must say, out of all the techniques, I actually struggled with this one. And this is something I'm going to need to practice a lot to get a handle on painting around these shapes, and not just the process of painting around them, but if you notice here, the lines aren't confident around them, the marks aren't confident, and in the end, as it dried, I noticed that the wash around it wasn't a consistent wash as I would want it to be as well. So some work to be done on that, but again, this is just my first time through, and as you know, I will be doing a lot of practice on these techniques. This method is, the next one is the dry brush, and in this method you're using a lot less paint than you normally would, a lot less water than you normally would, and then using it lightly, pushing into the paper and using the brush to create those strokes, and that happens pretty easily. This next technique is lifting. As you see, I put down an even wash. This one actually turned out pretty well. I really liked how even that wash went down, and I think I used a little bit more water than I did in the first one, and it worked out great. The lifting technique is once you've applied that even wash, you then dry off your brush on a paper towel or cloth or whatever you're using, and you just have to dry it off pretty lightly actually. And as you make those strokes, it actually lifts the paint off the paper and creates that effect. So these are the 6 techniques that I practice. As you can see them there, I will be getting a lot more into color mixing as watercolor will force me to do, and hope to incorporate this into my artwork, and I hope that you would join me on the journey. If you got something out of this video, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.